Byte Club, welcome once again to Debate That, the show where we talk about both sides of one topic, and then at the end, we reveal who had the more convincing argument. Now, if you didn't, you got to check out the debut, the inaugural edition of Debate That, where we talked about wrestling terminology, where Keith was against it, Ryan was for it. It was a hell of a conversation, and that was a topic suggested by Keith. So for this edition, I have a list of 3 topics that Ryan sent to me directly. Keith does not know the topic, and what's going to happen is this. Once they find out who is for, against, and the topic, they have to make their opening argument. Afterwards, they make the counter argument. They can either react to what the other person said, or they can contribute something else. And throughout it, I'll make sure to keep things fun for everybody watching, and make sure to comment with who you think won the argument. So you guys ready?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So the topic at hand is the Hell in a Cell still worth doing? The match itself, wrestling is not as violent as it was in the past, and we talked about this in the podcast numerous occasions, including after WrestleMania. So, Keith is going to be for keeping the Hell in a Cell, and Ryan has to develop an argument as to why they should get rid of it. It's gone. It's got to be gone forever. Regardless of your actual opinions, you guys are not going to have 1 to 2 minutes to prepare your arguments, and then we will be back. So, camera magic. Preparation time is over, and do not forget that the topic is the Hell in a Cell match still worth doing? So, kicking things off first with his arguments will be Keith Posch as to why they should keep the Hell in a Cell match as a thing happening in wrestling.
So the Hell in a Cell match, I think there is absolute merit to keeping it around. The thing that needs to go is the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Ever since the Hell in a Cell came around, like, oh, okay, it's October, I guess we need to do a Cell match. That's when it really lost its the magic around it, where it used to be. Think back to the end of an era match at WrestleMania 28, where it was Undertaker versus Triple H. Like, that was a big moment. We're going into Hell in a Cell. It's going to be the final match, this end of an era. That's where the Hell in a Cell belongs. It doesn't need to be, oh, it's a certain month, so I guess we got this feud going on. I guess we'll throw them in a Hell in a Cell. That's why it's lost its magic in the last little while. So if you got rid of the pay-per-view, it totally could go back to being this amazing thing. Yes, it's not going to be like the Hell in a Cell of old, where Mankind went off the cell and it was crazy, but those matches, those moments don't really need to exist anymore. I know Shane McMahon did it recently, but even that was a little different. It didn't really have the impact that the Mick Foley one did. But if you look at the recent Hell in a Cell matches, the match quality isn't that bad. So if they just made it a little more special, if they made it more of like a moment, this giant build up to like maybe a year-long feud, that there's only one way these two guys are going to settle this, and that's beating the hell out of each other inside of Hell in a Cell, it could totally go back to feeling like this big match. It's just the pay-per-view really waters it down.
So thank you, Keith. Just to recap, you're saying that the match itself was good, even though we don't need that much violence compared to like your Mick Foley versus The Undertaker. It can be very good for a specific storyline or a conclusion to a storyline. It's just a matter of getting rid of the pay-per-view, which many people have historically been saying, not just for that, but for different matches like Extreme Rules, etc. So thank you, Keith, for that. And now Ryan, as to why it shouldn't continue to exist.
At this point, the Hell in a Cell match, I feel like everything has been done, and it's just not the same in a post-Attitude Era world. I think a lot of things that happen in these Cell matches can be done in more interesting match types that offer flexibility. Last man standing matches, you can do a lot more than you can actually do in a Hell in a Cell match, because nowadays Hell in a Cell matches have kind of become just a weapon fest that could be accomplished with a standard Extreme Rules / hardcore match. With the blood gone, simple things like grinding their face against the cage and things like that, it really just doesn't have the same impact. It doesn't really emphasize the brutality of what a Hell in a Cell used to mean. You can look at things like the Elimination Chamber match, which I think now with the new chamber, there's just more things, more surprises that can be done with that. The Elimination Chamber is an easier match to just throw into a pay-per-view, and it feels right, whereas the current landscape with Hell in a Cell and its pay-per-view, it's really brute forced, and just, it doesn't work as well. You know, you can brute force an Elimination Chamber, and that makes sense, but when you brute force a Hell in a Cell, it just doesn't provide the same impact. I think Keith makes a great point about the the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view hurting Hell in a Cell, and I think it's really damaged it to a point that it does just need to go away for a while.
So thank you, Ryan. Just to recap, you're saying that pretty much everything has been done that could be done in the Hell in a Cell matches, and that for the most part, most of the spots or most of the big things that we've seen in these matches, they can probably be done in like an Extreme Rules or even the Elimination Chamber, which got a makeover. And many people have been saying, aren't they almost the same thing since the chamber pods? And then you're saying that the Elimination Chamber match makes a lot more sense, whereas the Hell in a Cell one sometimes just feel like it's forced into one spot as opposed to it making just more sense, it feeling more natural about that. So thank you to both of you. And now, Keith, do you have a counter argument based on what Ryan has said? I think his points go more directly against yours, where he's just saying like other matches make more sense than the Hell in a Cell match.
You mentioned that it was that Hell in a Cell matches kind of just come down to weapon fests this day or today. And I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing, because I do disagree that everything's been done with what you can do with a weapon, because we did see some innovation in the Seth Rollins Kevin Owens one recently as well. So I do think that there is still realms to explore, and it's the same argument you could make for those last man standing matches, for like any other match type where almost everything really has been done. It's about just small variations. Like to go to the last man standing match point, how many times can you dump something on somebody to make sure they don't get up, or throw them off of a stage or through a stage so both people don't get up? It's something that there's not a lot of innovation left no matter where you go, and I think that that's not something that's just unique to the Hell in a Cell.
Ryan,
I would just argue that with other match types like Last Man Standing, Falls Count Anywhere, the entire world is technically at your disposal, whereas the Hell in a Cell, for the most part, keeps you within the confines of the cell. Sure, people escape, but they don't generally stray too far. And yeah, I mean, sure, there's a few spots that can involve sort of the cage and some weapons, but rarely do I find that it's anything groundbreaking. I mean, the big things have already happened, and now like literally the last thing left was somebody going off the top of the new taller cell. And now that that's been done, I feel that there's just really nothing left to offer, and that the pay-per-view itself has damaged the impact and interest in Hell in a Cell enough that it's currently in this environment not worth doing anymore.
Now, I do have some questions for both of you, starting first with Keith. So you say that not everything has been done. You disagree with Ryan stating that most of the things that could be imagined have already been done. What have been some of your favorite things in recent Hell in a Cell matches, and how did you feel about the Shane McMahon spot, where in WrestleMania, he dove off the cell through the announcer table, but obviously due to safety, they padded the table, so it didn't have this impact, and most people you heard react in the way that they were happy about the spot, but almost like the Elimination Chamber, they got the security reason as to why it didn't have that impact, but at the same time, the impact is the reason they go forward to look to the match.
Yeah, the Shane McMahon one is a little weird in the way that you saw it coming a mile away. You knew it was going to happen, and I'm very happy that they took the safety notes that they did, and it all lessened the impact. It goes to my point of why things like that don't need to happen anymore. And as far as my favorite things in the cell, I love the Weapon Fest. I think it's this. They found a good medium in the Hell in a Cell where, yes, you're probably just going to get chairs, the steps, and tables, but they do a lot of awesome things with it, and it's a fun match.
Can you name a specific example for something recently?
For something recently? Well, to go to last year's Hell in a Cell matches, the Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens one, where they kind of propped the table in between the ring and the ring in the cell itself, that was awesome. Just the way that the Rusev and Roman Reigns just beat the crap out of each other with everything but the kitchen sink. I love that stuff. Or even the little things like, it seems like a weird thing to call this innovation, but a couple of years ago when Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker ripped up the ring inside the cell, and then The Undertaker got F5'd on just like the Raw ring. That's a cool thing that you don't see in other matches, and it just adds to this level of brutality. It's pardon the pun, it's very caged in. They have it very caged in, the type of match that the Hell in a Cell is, and it builds a certain expectation of, you know what you're going to get. You know you're going to get this brutality. And if they got rid of the pay-per-view and just made it like even less than once a year, like maybe every couple of years, bring out the Hell in a Cell. It's, those big feuds that warrant it. Just have them go beat the crap out of each other inside the structure, and then one man might not walk out.
So you're sort of pointing out almost a psychological level where, even though, like Ryan said, you could do a lot of these spots in a TLC and an Extreme Rules or something, there's something to the cell being there, knowing that they're limited, that even if they go outside and do other things that could be done in other matches, there's the element of escape or staying in there and removing the ring. It's almost like an Extreme Rules match, I guess, if you really want to say it like that. Now, Ryan, I have a question for you. Let's remove the pay-per-view argument, because I think the three of us, regardless, agree that the pay-per-view Hell in a Cell doesn't work, and it removes some of that mystique. After that, don't you think there's something to like a big fight feel to the Hell in a Cell? You look at, Triple H versus The Undertaker, to which Keith and I were there live, and there was something to, in that case, there was a storyline concluding. It was trying to conquer that person. And then in The Undertaker's case, it was they wanted to beat him at one of his own games. And there's something to the music when it comes down. We had The Memory Remains in that case, the storyline, and some of the crazy things that can happen, maybe not so in other matches, or maybe just the Hell in a Cell, you come to expect it. Do you think that it doesn't have that big fight feel?
I think a lot of that has been lost, and at this point in time, I mean, sure, it's hard to argue against that with The Undertaker and that their association there, but after you put that aside, there's really, I don't think that big fight feel exists for pretty much any other situation. Undertaker's like the exception to the rule, and I don't think we're going to see Taker in another Hell in a Cell match, so I think at this point, it's safe to say that it does need to go away for quite some time. It doesn't have the same impact. They peaked way too early with Hell in a Cell. Mick Foley, they pretty much hit just insane high spots with it that no other Hell in a Cell match will ever live up to the ones that happened in the Attitude Era in the early 2000s. They did way too crazy stuff back then, and I feel like every other Hell in a Cell match from then on is just going to be a disappointment.
Some great points from both sides, actually, there, where, yeah, you remove the pay-per-view, and there has been some mystique lost to it. So I think there's two things the three of us can agree, and me is more like overhearing both of you, and it's that it has lost its mystique. Whether we like it or not, it's not to the same level that it was like during the Attitude Era or even just a little bit post, and then the pay-per-view does not help it. So thank you both for the argument. Now, who do I think had the more convincing argument? I'm going to have to give this one to Keith, actually, in this edition. Because when you think about the Hell in a Cell, I think the problem, and Ryan, you actually brought up an excellent point. Mick Foley, for all the good things that he did for the match, he almost did things that nobody else would do because they're sane human beings. So people just came to expect that big spot. But some of my favorite Hell in a Cell matches have just been brawls, or like Keith mentioned, and that's what really led me to the argument where, you rip the ring apart. Now, the Nexus ripped the ring apart during an episode of Raw. It's not the same thing, because when you go into the Hell in a Cell, it's what else can you do in there? You're not going to leave there unless you climb the top of the cage and dive off of it. How can you get creative with that? It's almost like Kofi in the Rumble, where what's Kofi going to do now? There's not a lot of options there. So I do think there's something absolutely there. And one thing that neither one of you brought up, seeing the Hell in a Cell live, there's something to walking into an arena, seeing that, and knowing that when it comes down, business is about to pick up. That's one of the top matches. That's not a pre-show match ever. Although I do think the Elimination Chamber and the Hell in a Cell are kind of in the same category at this point. But I think the Elimination Chamber is more so for championship opportunities or championship matches, or just, who are the top 4? Who are the top 2 guys we're supposed to hear? It's about one thing. And that one thing is survival and to conclude a storyline. So I guess that's really 2 things, not one. So thank you guys so much. That has been my perspective from the argument. So congratulations to you, Keith. You have won this argument. You don't do that well in game shows, but you did pretty good with this argument here. How do you feel?
I feel like a master debater.
Oh, got to be careful with that one there. But folks, Byte Club, who do you think made the more convincing argument? Definitely drop a comment and let us know, as well as suggest any future Byte debate, or debate that, I should say, topics that we should maybe include. Because I do very much enjoy this format. There are a lot of topics in wrestling that are controversial, not just debatable, but damn near controversial. So check out our podcast, available every single Wednesday night. If you like our content, we also have unboxings, we have roundtables, we have a variety of things, and we're not limiting ourselves to just the podcast. That is our coup de grace. We talk about Raw and SmackDown Live. If you want to support us directly, you can upvote, follow, subscribe, get the word out. We are on social media. The best way that you can consume our content and have more people access it is simply by getting the word out. You can also support us by going to patreon.com/bytethat. You get early access. You get exclusive updates. Your name, if you're a gold patron, goes to the end of these videos, as well as permanently embedded into our website, which is bytethat.com, which is the place where you can get all of that information. Keith, give me a smile. Ryan, give me a frown. That's what Debate That does to you. So thank you guys for watching. Had a ton of fun, and we'll be back with a lot more of everything here on Byte That. Every moment spent with you is a moment I treasure. Don't wanna close my eyes. I don't wanna fall asleep, 'cause I miss you, baby. And I don't wanna miss a thing.